Hello everyone and welcome to my studio. I'm going to do a instruction video for this little hedgehog card that I made. In your kit there will be a little line pattern and a color reference photo of the card. There'll also be, you probably can't see it very well on camera, but it's a traced on image of your hedgehog in pencil on this watercolor card paper. It's got a crease in it that you know where to fold it, and it'll be your card. And then you'll also have an envelope. For sake of time, I penned mine. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take your pen, this micro pen. I was using a 05. You can see that. And you're going to want to pen on your hedgehog. Then, after you pen on your hedgehog, sorry, had to get up for my eraser. You're going to want to let it dry for a few minutes before you do this because you can't smear the pen. But once it's dry, it's pretty set. So you're going to want to erase the pencil that's on there because you're going to be able to see that if you don't through the watercolor. So I just got this eraser at an art store. And you get eraser. You just want to make sure your eraser's clean. If your eraser's like really dirty, then just like rub it on the table until it's clean. And then you want to very carefully just get that eraser stuff off. I'm pushing it into the trash can right here because I don't want it to interfere with my watercolor. So after I clean that off, we've got our little hedgehog. He's all penned. Now we can start. So to start, I have my watercolor set. This is very similar to the set that I have for my classes. There is more colors you can buy, but I'm going to start with this set. I like to have 2 cups of water, one clean and one for cleaning off my brush, so this one's going to get really dirty. I also have a pipette that I can drip onto my watercolor set to get it start to get wet in there. So I did that already. And what we are going to do first is we are going to start with his little hat. So we have sap green here, and this one's hooker's green. Most of my students' kits come with Viridian, which is a little bluer. I didn't have Viridian, so we're going to use hookers today, but it's going to be mostly sap anyways. So and hookers is very similar to Viridian. We're just going to get some color on there, and I know it's hard to see the color with the light reflecting on it, but it's just green. I also usually have a scrap paper today, but I forgot to get it out to kind of test the colors on. Maybe I'll just use my table right here. So that's just green. You can see it a little better up here than you can on my tray. And I'm going to add some of the what will be Viridian green for you guys. It's your darker bluer green to it. Just to make this really really bright green for St. Patrick's Day. So I'm just using my medium-sized brush. If it feels too big for you, grab your smaller one. That's fine. And we'll just fill that in. Like that, and it's a little puddly, so I'm going to clean off my brush, dry it a little bit, and just try to pull up some of that excess puddle. I don't want to pull up all the color though. Okay, I want to do like a little bit darker on one side, so I'm going to just take the straight Viridian green and put it along the side, like so. That kind of helps it look 3D. I'm going to clean my brush and just kind of pick up these extras, blend them in a little bit. And then I'm going to take some straight sap green, that's the lighter green that you have in your kit, and just put that over here. My colors are not wanting to blend today, but they'll dry okay. Okay, so then we also want to take that color and do his little brim. Oh. So you want to watch out for drips of water on your brush. I don't know if you can see it, but there's one right here on my brush. If that falls on my painting, then it can really screw my painting up. So I like to watch out for those and dry them off. And we'll just paint his rim. If you go outside the lines a little bit, that's okay. It's supposed to be a loose little painting. The little leaf clover on coming out of his hat, I want that a little bit lighter. So I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of the cadmium yellow and bring it in here to kind of lighten up my green. I'm just using this mix I already have and just lightening half of it. I know it's probably hard to see the colors on there. Because it doesn't look much lighter, but it will on my paper. So here we've got the leaf on there. I may come back and darken his hat a little bit. I'll decide when it dries if it needs that. While you have this leaf color out, I've got some eraser bits there. You're going to want to just go ahead and do these leaves down here. Biggest thing about doing stuff at the bottom is you don't want to get your hand in it, so be careful. And like I said, it's okay if you go outside the lines a little bit. I want this to be a loose kind of illustration that's colored in is kind of my goal. And it went out right there a little bit. I got my clovers colored. I'm gonna wait on the middle one. So the biggest thing with watercolor is you don't want to do things that are wet. So right now this is wet right here, and we don't want to do his like little brim, or I don't know what that's called on your hat. On his hat, his little decoration, until this is more dry, because we don't want it to bleed into one another. So we're going to want to work more down here until that dries. And watercolor usually dries fast. My studio's in the basement, so it takes a little longer here because it's a little colder. So I'm just cleaning off my brush. So I'm going to mix his color now. So we're going for this color right here in the middle. So I'm going to take this yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is kind of that golden color that's in your kit. And then I do want it not just the golden color. That's a little bit too light, so I'm going to add some of this burnt sienna. It's kind of a red-brown, but it's really strong, so I'm going to add just a little bit at a time, which that was not enough, so a little bit more. It's going to kind of warm up your yellow ochre a little bit. And I want it lighter in the middle and go darker on the outside. So how you get it lighter is you add more water. So I'm going to take water from my clean glass and add more water to one side of this. And we're not doing his nose. His nose is pink. So I'm going to do around his nose. And I'm just using my favorite size brush, that middle size still. Every brand has a different number, else I'd tell you the number. But I know I said it's going to go darker on the outside, but right now we're just going to fill it in so that it's... I'm going to go into his quills a little bit so we don't have a line. And this is probably the hardest part, going in the middle here. If you need a smaller brush, get a smaller brush. You want to work kind of quickly so you don't get any lines. If something starts to dry, you could get a line. And since it's a loose painting, that's not always such a bad thing, but I don't want a line right across his face, so I'm going to try to go quickly with this. Pick up a little bit more paint here. Get his little hand. There's his other hand. And come around, and we need to get his feet too. Touch right here. There's like just a puddle there. Now I'm starting to get those lines that I was talking about. I'll have to fix that. Yeah, I'm going to clean my brush. Try to clean up over here. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there is a little bit of line. So this is just a clean brush that I dried off a little bit so it didn't have too much water. Just pick up that line in there. Okay, so there's his base coat. So now we want to like give him some shape. Put in some of these darker shadows and stuff. And hopefully my computer doesn't die. It's saying there's low batteries, so we'll see how this goes. This is my first video, so bear with me. So I'm adding more. Paint came out. I'm adding more burnt sienna. So it's more burnt sienna than yellow ochre. I kind of have the yellow ochre over here, so I can still have that lighter color. And I'm just going to bring my brush to a point. I'm going to come in, and it's great if it's still wet when you do this, but it looks like mine has dried. Okay, but I don't want that to dry, so we're going to clean off our brush so it's kind of dry it a little bit so it's just not overly wet, and just kind of bring that wet brush across. That kind of blends it out. Do the same with the ears. And we're just trying to make it so that line's not so harsh right there. Okay, pick up more of that burnt sienna with a little bit of yellow ochre. His eyebrows are probably going to be a little darker, so we'll get some dark there. His nose, underneath his nose. And it's just like, we're just putting in shadows. So around his hand. I don't want to get too far ahead because I want to blend it in again. So clean off my brush. You could potentially have two brushes, one with the color on it and one that was clean. But I'm kind of lazy, so. Okay, more burnt sienna, that red brown. And I'm going to get it even darker. It's really moving around in my. Stop moving. There we go. Okay. So it's a little darker, a little more bold. I'm going to go around. All right. Sorry, everyone, for the jump cut here. My computer died, and we had to go find the plug. So won't make that mistake again. I didn't get much further before I realized my computer wasn't recording anymore. I did that, just to review, we did the burnt sienna along the outside here. And then I got a clean, slightly damp brush and blended it in a little bit. And then I also did a little bit of that burnt sienna down here on the bottom of his feet to give them a little shadow. Now we can go back and finish our hedgehog here. So I'm going to go back with this burnt sienna with a little bit of yellow ochre in it. And I'm just going to do his hands because they look really pale. I'm doing his fingers and then just a little bit around the outside. And now that looks really choppy right now, but we get our brush wet and then dry it off a little bit. And you can go back and kind of go right up against that line that you just made and it'll blend it in like so. Okay, now looking at my hedgehog, I feel like the shadow right here on his eye needs to be a little bit darker, so I'm gonna go once again. Maybe yours is dark enough, but I just feel like it needs to be a little bit darker. So this is the burnt sienna right there. We're gonna get a clean, slightly damp brush and just pull that. And yeah, so that looks much better. I just wanted to give it that depth so that his nose is coming out a little bit. I did kind of went out of the line. So if you have a clean brush that's slightly dried, you can pull off color and fix any little mistakes. Makes it pretty easy. All right, so next, let's do his hat up here. First check and make sure his hat is dry. Mine's pretty dry, especially since I had to go get that computer cord. So his hat is, we're going to use yellow ochre again, and put it in a new spot because we're going to mix some yellow in it. So this is over here. This is cadmium yellow. So I have cadmium yellow and cadmium yellow pale. The cadmium yellow is just a little more orange. We're going to go in there and mix the cadmium yellow into that. One advantage of me stopping is I did go get a piece of paper to test things out. And it looks like I need a little more yellow ochre, so I'm just going to grab a little more yellow ochre. And hit the little golden part of his hat. Now I just went wide over those darker spots since they're darker. They have got a little bit too much paint, so I'm pulling it up a little bit with a drier brush. But since those spots are darker, we can just paint right over the lighter color. Makes it a little easier. While it's still wet, I'm going to grab some cadmium red right here. It's super strong, so got way too much. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little of this cadmium red and mix it in with my yellow. It's so strong. You don't want, if we're looking for orange here, not red, so we're going to mix it until we get darker orange. There we go. Let's see, is that dark enough? Need a little bit darker. Okay. So this little line in the middle, it's gonna be a little bit shadowed, so I'm just gonna, and that is telling me that I did not make it dark enough, so I will grab some more red. Keep having this puddling effect today. It's not liking me. There we go. Just wanted like a little shadow in there. It's pretty subtle. But... All right. So while we wait for that to dry, and then we'll do the darker parts. We're going to do his quills. So I'm going to use burnt umber. These things are moving around. Burnt umber right here. I'm going to start with just straight burnt umber. Around the, kind of do a base coat. The cool thing about the pen is you can just paint right over it and it doesn't smear anything. So, okay, so there's the burnt umber. Now I'm going to take more burnt umber and I'm going to add some Payne's Gray. So Payne's Gray almost looks black. This is the color right here. That's Payne's Gray. It's kind of a black, blue, dark gray. So I'm just taking a little, it's going to make our brown more of a deep brown rather than a kind of a red brown. Adding some water because it was a little too dark. And then with this one, hopefully your other brown is still wet. First, you're going to get right under your hat, but you're going to want to go on your quills and bring those up and out. And on the hat, it's probably the most difficult part to make it look right. I am going to come back and make that darker. And this is where a smaller brush might be helpful, so I'm going to switch. Actually, first I'm going to do this. I'm going to go around with this dark color so it kind of blends in with the... It's kind of got a halo, so now I've got that dark color there. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I just got it wet. This is a lot smaller. My color's a little watered down, so I'm going to get some more pigment for my paint. That was way too much Payne's Gray. More burnt umber. So we're going to come and just... So the key to doing these little quills, I'm going to show you on this little piece of paper here, is if you push down more, you get a fatter line like that. If you push down really light, you get a thinner line. So how I'm doing it is I push down and lift up so that it's fatter on one end and thinner on the other. And if you need to practice this a little bit, you can, but they don't need to be perfect. But that's what you don't want, is a whole bunch of lines like this. So don't push down really hard. Use the tip of your brush. So you're going to push down and then lift up on the pressure. And you get this, you get a really fine line with this brush. Anyways, I'll go back to this. Oh, and I bumped this. Oh. Okay. Probably because I've got my hand right here. You're going to want to paint the direction the quills are going, which I put in your drawing. So just go the same direction. You don't have to go right over the pen. Sometimes turning your paper is helpful. It's hard to do the left side when you're right-handed. So I'm actually going to get around his ear. There we go. And just have fun with it there. Now these, they're starting to go all the same way, so I'm going to bring some that are going back up a little bit so that he's a little more crazy quill-like. All right, so there's our quills. Now I want it darker where the hat is sitting because that's all going to be in shadow. So I'm going to take more Payne's Gray and put it with my brown. Let's see what happened. Some of the orange came in. I actually think it'll be okay though. Okay, to make things darker, we talked about to make them lighter that you add more water. To make them darker, you want a little bit less water. You need enough for it to still flow, but just get more paint in there. So a little more brown though. More brown. There we go. So this is going to be significantly darker. So first I'm going to do that line right under his hat just to give it that shadow. Now, since I was mixing, my brush has quite a bit of paint on it. It's almost too much. So I'm going to clean it off so I can have less paint. And I'm just kind of bring it down a little bit. Almost so you have this little triangle. Okay, and then I'm cleaning off my brush and slightly drying it, so I just have a damp one, and we're just gonna do that blending thing again so there's not a line. So then it's darker right there. All right, let's move to his nose. So over here we have, make sure this is on camera, we have alizarin crimson, and this is madder pink, or rose madder pink, or permanent rose. So we want it, I think I'm going to do both pinks. I'm going to mix it over here. You only need a little bit. His nose is really small. But then this is going to be, this over again. It's going to be way too red. So I'm going to add a little bit of this orange and water. So we get this lighter, oh, sorry, this my little thing's off the camera. So you get this like lighter, see my first one's a little dark. Really light pink on there. All right, and then underneath his nose we want it a little darker, so but we don't necessarily want it brighter. So I'm actually going to grab some of this burnt sienna to kind of muddy it up a little bit. Muddy up that pink. And I don't feel like it's quite dark enough. So what I'm going to do is grab a tiny bit of this purple, and purple's super strong, so little bits at a time is better. I'm going to mix it into this muddy color that I already made. Oh yeah, that's much better. So he's got a little shadow under his nose. All right, so now we'll go to our clover. We are getting close to being done. So we will I'll grab my bigger brush, my favorite one. I really only use these two, but occasionally I'll use a flat one. Or a bigger round one would work. We don't need that today. Okay, so we've got this green up here that we mixed. We're just going to take more of the Viridian green and make it darker. Now mine isn't quite Viridian, like I said. Mine's a Hooker's green. So I'm actually going to add some ultramarine blue. I'm just trying to make a little more blue-green. But your Viridian is probably going to be fine because it's a little more bluer. Or you can make your clover whatever green you want, really. You don't have to... It can be the same color as these if you want. You're the artist, so you get to choose what your colors are. It's the best part. You can make your hedgehog purple if you wanted. Techniques are all the same. You just want to do darker for the shadows and blend them in a little bit. Okay, now if you need to grab your smaller brush to do that little stem, because it is really small, don't be afraid to do that. I got a puddle of color here, so pick that up a little bit. Now I think I want to make it a little bit warmer in some spots, so I'm going to grab some sap green and just hit it. This is completely voluntary. You could leave it how it was. Okay, got brush was too dry. If your brush is too dry, it'll pull up the paint. You don't want it to pull up the paint, which mine is kind of doing right now. Okay, and then I want it a little bit darker in the middle. So we're going to get that, your Viridian green. Mine's Hooker's. I'm actually going to grab some more of this blue. And this is where you might want to add some blue to your Viridian green. You've got a pretty dark color here. I don't know if you can see that. While it's still wet, I just am going to put a dot right there in the middle. That's where all the leaves are meeting in the middle. So it's going to be a little darker there. There's my clover. Now we check if our hat is... It's almost there. Okay, we'll do the grass. The grass is just sap green with a little bit of your cadmium yellow. That's the slightly darker one. And all you do for the grass is you bring it down right here Be careful around his feet. I want to go under his feet though. Bring it down a little further. I went right over his quills. As long as you don't sit and rub it, they'll stay there. Okay, then I need a clean brush that's wet, not dripping. And you're just going to come right under with the, well, that's a little bit, mine was a little bit too wet. Right under with some water. I'm going right under the line, not over it. And that just blends that grass down and fades it out. All right, let's check this out. Should be dry enough now. Gonna grab some burnt umber and a little bit of this quill mixture that we made. And you know what? I'm gonna grab a smaller brush because it's a pretty small area. So back to smaller brush. Careful not to put your hand in this paint down here. I'm anchoring my pinky like this, just to give my hands stability because sometimes my hands shake. I'm just gonna paint in these little details on his hat. And voila! Your hedgehog is done. Now, if this is a card, so if you wanted to write something down here with your handy pen, you can write Happy St. Patrick's Day or something about luck or whatever, or you can leave it blank. I like to leave mine blank because this is a 5x7 card. I figure that if I give this card to somebody, they could possibly frame this 5x7 card, and it is a piece of art. I hand painted it. So I don't do a lot of writing on my cards. I have some. I do make sure I sign them, but we just did down here. So I like to sign in a little bit smaller, like a 3 or a 2. One of these pens. I'm going to go with a 3. And if you're unsure about your signature, practice before. I have students that do like little like circles, like an initial and a circle, kind of like an @ sign, but it has their initial. I have students who just write their initials. I have students who print their name, and it really doesn't matter. Just any mark that means you. I mean, you painted this, so put your name on it. It's beautiful. Anyways, thank you for joining me today. I hope you had a lot of fun, and please come again next time. Thank you.